All right, so good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the December Indicator of Behavior meeting. Uh, I'm your chair and host, Charlie Frick from Johns Hopkins University Applied Physics Laboratory, and always happy to have folks here. Today, we'll be going over some interesting material from the Cacao project, and then giving some updates to our some of the work that we're currently in the middle of for IOB, and also I'll take a little time to discuss some of our planned work with the Open Cybersecurity Alliance CASP effort, and then we'll have some general discussion and Q&A for any concerns or questions people have about where the project's going and what we're doing, and then we'll wrap up. So again, happy to have everyone here and welcome. Today, we have Dr. Vasilios Mavridis, who has, for those of you guys that have seen Vasilios' work in the past, he's been a frequent contributor to the Cacao standard for security playbooks and has some really exciting, at least in my opinion, exciting developments with Cacao that a lot of us will get to play with in the new year. So with that said, Vasilios, I'll hand it over to you, and I'll let you know if there are any questions in case you can't see the chat.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And I'll just take 10 seconds to share my screen. And you should be able to see my presentation now.
Looks beautiful.
All right. So, Charlie, first of all, thank you for the invitation. I really appreciate it. So, basically, today I'm going to introduce you to a new project. This is a new OC sub-project. It is called the Cacao Roaster. And as you can understand by the name, it's very associated with the Cacao Security Playbooks standard or specification that the Cacao Technical Committee has been developing since 2019. And my intent is, except from showing you the demo, the tool that we have developed and how you can use it, what its purpose, according to the agenda, I will also give you a brief introduction to Cacao for those of you that may not be familiar with it. So what is it all about? What its current state, and how do we move forward, basically creating tooling for Cacao. Having said that, so why we created Cacao, and I do assume that many or most of you here are quite familiar with it. So to make the long story short, you can envision it, you can visualize it that we wanted to do for security playbooks what STIX did for cyber threat intelligence. Basically create a standard that will allow us to encode defensive tradecraft, right? Cybersecurity operations, procedures, and processes into one common machine-readable format. So Cacao addresses multiple challenges that you would traditionally see in incident response, and they are enumerated here. But what we need to focus on is that Cacao basically is a security playbooks standard and is intended to allow us to exchange cybersecurity playbooks using one common format, and is intended for cybersecurity automation. Having said that, standardization is key for interoperability, and this is the reason we established the Cacao Technical Committee. This is an OASIS Technical Committee, and we have gone through too many iterations of coming up with the Cacao specification version 2.2, and I will introduce to it in a second. So nevertheless, in this slide, we're saying, that traditional incident response approaches that are manually and solely human-oriented, right, are not sustainable in the present day. Everything is dynamic, is going very fast, and is in a similar fashion as defenders. We need to be able to exchange, this collective knowledge, these defensive process and procedures that we come up with, in cyber-relevant time. So, what is Cacao? First of all, it stands for Collaborative Automated Course of Action Operations for Cybersecurity. So it is a security playbook specification focused on cybersecurity. Having said that, we many times say that it's really focused on incident response, but you can use these cybersecurity playbooks for any kind of cybersecurity operations. So that would mean, it's not only about how to respond to an incident, but you could use it for red emulation, for security policy compliance, regulatory compliance, and many other things. So at the right side of the deck of the slide, you see the basically what comprises Kakao in a very high level. And I'll go into details in the next slide. But basically, we have a common framework for cybersecurity playbooks. So Kakao puts the glue between different tasks, tools, people, languages, and standards for cybersecurity operations. As you'll see in a while, it integrates with multiple standards and let's call them detection languages and actuating languages to perform something. For example, isolating an endpoint, right? It is machine readable, so the playbooks are encoded in JSON. We have a specification, but everything that is there right now, it is serialized in JSON. You can create your templates, right? An example would be that, there is this new ransomware piece and, our organization has seen it, we have performed some kind of security operations on it. Let's call it incident response. And now we are able to encode this into a playbook and exchange it with the rest of the community. They are automatable. So, and I have in a parenthesis here, automate as you go. We don't all have the ability to fully automate playbooks. Sometimes this is not the case at all, right? We may not want to fully automate a playbook for various reasons. So these abstract playbooks that we can define, we can keep them to be executed manually, automatically, or in a hybrid manner. And these templates that we exchange, they are basically, every time that we exchange something, you'll have to tailor it based on your infrastructure because you do things differently, more or less. But at a very high level, isolate an endpoint would mean the same thing for both of us. And Kakao itself is quite modular, so it's it has been developed like using an object-oriented approach, and also it allows you to incorporate extensions based on your use cases. Finally, it allows you to connect playbooks with playbooks, and this is part of its modularity and also your use case. Having said that, I'm not going through the high level now because I have a lower level diagram that will make more sense. So where are we now? Right now with Kakao, the standard itself, right? The technical committee just published the Kakao Security Playbooks version 2.0, commit specification 0.1 now in November. I'm going to share this presentation with you later, so you can actually pivot to the specification itself, to the latest specification, and you can have a read. And at the right side, I have also added a blog post that we created with a few folks in Kakao technical committee. So have a read. Basically, it describes what is Kakao in a very simplistic manner and very concise manner as well. So this is Kakao. Maybe it's a little visualization. Maybe it is a little deprecated, but that would account for 1 or 2%, let's say. So we have done some kind of minor enhancements since the last version, but more or less everything is the same. And we're not going through everything, but at the top you'll see a Kakao playbook, and the Kakao playbook. Let me see. I can possibly help you a little with the cursor to pinpoint you to the right place. So we have a Kakao playbook, and Kakao playbook contains metadata. We have different types of metadata here. Some are very friendly for filtering and finding the right playbook. And some other metadata basically support orchestrators regarding doing something. A simple example would be that we can have at the metadata level what kind of constructs and logic this playbook is using. So an orchestrator can check that very rapidly instead of reading the whole playbook, instead of parsing the whole playbook, and at some point bringing an error. I cannot execute that because I cannot, process parallel steps. So you can see that right away at the metadata section before you start running the playbook. Yeah, various stuff here. You can add different labels, basically the description of the playbook, the name, and I will show you these things very in a more easy manner using the software itself in a while. So Kakao playbooks contain workflow steps. Excuse me. So Kakao playbooks contain different workflow steps, right? This can be simple action steps, or they can basically branch other playbooks. Can have parallel steps, and it incorporates also conditional logic. So the workflow steps contain commands, and here we have different command types. So it can be something manual, it can be an HTTP API command, it can be a Sigma, it can be Yara, it can be a Caldera command for red emulation, or it can be a Kestrel threat hunting command. All the commands are executed against agents and targets. So basically, agents and targets are the same object, but you'll have use cases that an agent needs to execute a command over a target. So let's call it, it's a pivoting point that is going to perform something instead of accessing the end device directly for one reason or another. So for example, an action step here, the agent may be a human that's going to perform a Splunk query, and the Splunk device itself will be the target. Authentication information, pretty straightforward. And yeah, we also have extensions, so we can extend several constructs in Kakao, including the metadata section, the agents and targets, etc., etc., etc. So, and please feel free to interrupt me. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them all. So here I have some example playbooks, so I can show you how we transition from basically static documents to something more machine readable, and the advantage of having something in a machine readable format, and how we go from there. So this is coming from the cybersecurity and vulnerability response playbooks that was published by CISA in November 2021. And basically I have just taken two playbooks out of this comprehensive document. One is for vulnerability response, right? So they define the process, and at some point in this playbook, they have a node that implies a dependency to another playbook, which is an incident response process. So comprehensive documents, quite heavy. It's not the easiest thing to get and extrapolate into something machine readable or into your SOAR platform. It has its challenges. So I have here these bullet points that basically describe that these are static documents. There are lists of tasks with defined sequential order and decision logic, if statements, basically, that kind of things. Task assignment, and may provide detailed guidance and best practice through comprehensive documentation. And this is the case of these playbooks. And I have this playbook here because this is the playbook that we're going to play with later using our Kakao software. So before we go to demonstrate the software itself, so this is how this process, this playbook would look like in Kakao. So this is serialized in JSON, but of course, it's not easy for us humans to start writing something in JSON, especially when it's about playbooks that tend to be not very small, not very long, but it's also about the dependencies themselves between playbooks. So modularity is too important. And if we want to start automating at least nodes or tasks in these playbooks, we'll need to come up with something like this that machines can parse, understand, and execute. So tools for Kakao. Well, I think this is one of the first tools that's going to become open source. Well, it is open source already. It's just that we have not pushed it yet onto the GitHub repo, but this is an OCA now sub-project. It has been accepted, and it has a release date of January 15, 2024. So it will go live, and everybody is free to download and use it. So our aim is to build a community around that. So that will allow us first to improve the software itself, and also see how we can couple the software with other technologies. Yeah, this is apparent, right? So in this group, we talk about indicators of behavior. We have seen presentations from for StickSwifter, Kestrel, Sticks related presentations, extensions. The indicators of behavior project itself. So how do we bring all these things together? So this is also a fundamental component to bring all these things together, because it will allow us to put the glue into all these things. And of course, execution is another part that we don't handle using this software. So the name is Kakao Roaster. I say here or editor because that was the initial name. We haven't changed it yet, but when we upload it on GitHub, it's going to say roaster here. It will allow us to design and modify playbooks graphically in a no-code manner. And our GitHub now is live. It has been created. It's still empty, but I want to make you aware of it. So, and we have an OCA Slack channel now. So please join. Most of you here have access in the OCA Slack channel. So find the Kakao Roaster channel in particular. And special acknowledgements to, Mateus is here with us today. So he's the lead engineer for this software. And of course, the software actually started with by these three interns that we have at the University of Oslo a year ago. And then, we built on top of it. So credits to them. Live demo. So are we ready? Do you have any questions before I proceed with the demo?
Yes, Vasilios,
Yeah.
if I may.
Yeah.
It's pretty clear for me the relation to Kestrel, to threat hunting, and everything what you just show us. Even I know maybe 90% of this, it's absolutely great. So my question, did you think when you thought about vulnerabilities, did you think about SBOM or something like that to check it or to do something with Kakao?
I mean, Kakao is quite granular. So if that needs to be at the command level, we can extend it. If it needs something else, we can discuss it. So we have not implemented a use case like this. But if you want to retrieve an SBOM, check something in this SBOM, and based on that, perform something. For sure, this is doable. So the architecture of Kakao allows you to perform any kind of action that you desire, basically. We just need to tailor this playbook, based on the use case that we have. So it's doable, and of course, it's not something straightforward, right? I mean, one will say, for example, take this SBOM and identify if there is a vulnerable library, and that's just a single example, right? So we need to have something that is able to perform that and then we need to get back the result, and based on the result, we move on with the next action step in Kakao Playbook.
Okay, thank you.
So yeah, let me see what can I do here. I'll stop sharing my screen for a second. Let me go here like this. Now let's share my screen. And you should be able to see the front page of the editor, right?
It looks, yes, we do.
Okay, perfect. So I'll start with the basics, basically showing you a little how the application works and discuss a little, its high-level architecture, how it validates stuff and how we create stuff. If you want more details about it, really about the libraries and some, specialized questions, Matos is also here to support. Having said that, before I show you a finalized playbook, I'll start showing you how the editor works by itself. Basically, we can create new playbooks or we can import a playbook, right? The user settings here now is not very important, but it helps us with the demo. This will become though meaningful in the future, but basically here we have encoded some kind of identifiers, so we can, when we create a playbook, we can have the created by, right? So we have our ID here, have some other stuff for digital signatures. So now we can create a new playbook. So this is a multi-instance application, right? You can create as many playbooks as you want, right? You can start creating playbooks at the same time, different people, different teams. So going back to the main, so this conforms, this software conforms to the Kakao specification version 2.0. So actually, basically that means also that the application itself makes use of the Kakao specification version 2.0 JSON validation schemas. And these JSON validation schemas that they are open source right now on our own GitHub. We are going to transfer them to the Kakao GitHub in tomorrow or the next few days. Basically help a lot with populating automatically many stuff in this front end, and in particular this right-hand side panel with the properties that you would have to populate. Having said that, let's start populating a small playbook to understand what's going on and how we create stuff, and then I'll show you a larger one. I'll show you the CISA one. So, we have always a start step. Here we have our palette, right? You can expand it, or if you get familiar with it, you just save space, so you don't need to see, all the details, what everything is all about. So this is the start step, and based on each step, then you can see what other steps you can populate, basically. So this palette here changes based on the construct that you are going to use. So from a start step, let's just create an action step. So this is an action step that is going to perform something. Having said that, let's go to the metadata section of the playbook, right? Because this is what Kakao is all about. Comprises metadata, action steps, agents and targets, commands, etc. So let's go to the metadata section. Let's give it a meaningful name. So this is a playbook.
Vasilis, sorry to
Yes.
interrupt. I was just thinking to say that you can possibly click Command plus to make it a little bigger for people to read.
Yeah, I can just. You mean the side panel or the graphic side?
Click on the side panel and just click on the keyboard Command plus.
Okay, cool. So you want the side panel. Okay.
Yeah.
Is it better?
Yes, I think so.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. So we have action steps. Okay, let me go back creating the symbol. This is a playbook for the IOB group. Right. This is a single playbook to contain, to isolate an endpoint, let's say, right? And as you see here, the created bytes, because it's we haven't coded our identifier, it's automatically here populated. Though if we get something that is not ours, well, an alert, let's call it, a notification is going to pop up and it will say this is not your playbook. So if you do any kind of modification, a new playbook is going to be created and the create by is going to change here with ours. Yeah. So as you see, some things here are populated programmatically, so we don't need to populate the create and modify date. This is handled by the code itself. These are different properties, based on the specification. And of course, you can click here, and because these are parsed from the JSON validation schemas, can see all the details regarding what is this property all about, right? So basically, as long as you have a basic understanding of the Kakao specification, the editor itself is like it will guide you on how to create a playbook, because everything is self-explanatory here, right? So we can say, for example, that this playbook is relevant for the aviation sector. We can start adding some labels. For example, this playbook refers to the lazy panda intrusion set, and as you see, in the real time, the what we have at the top left side of the editor, changes automatically, right? This is a playbook for a big group. This is a simple playbook to isolate an endpoint. We see also a label here based on what we use, right? By default here, we can see it can infer that this is a Kakao 2.0 playbook. And at the same time, I'll keep populating some stuff so you can see. But at the same time, we can see in real time what we populate in JSON, right? So something that nowadays, still we are doing manually to have some playbook templates for the community to experiment with Kakao. So we'll see how that will look like at the end. So let's go back to that. So here also we have this minimap. So, in case you get lost, because, this is a large canvas, you can go here and you can find your playbook. We learned this the hard way. So we populate the playbook and we lost the playbook in the canvas. So we couldn't find where is it. So we create this minimap so you can go back to the playbook. We have different playbook types, so you can start adding your types here, right? It depends on what kind of playbook. This is an open vocabulary. Basically, you can add different playbook types if you want. So let's say that this is a mitigation playbook. Priority things, let's not touch them for now. Let's add some markings. So for the markings, for example, we'll need to define a new marking according to the Kakao specification, right? And then I'm gonna create a TLP marking for us. Let's make it clear for the purpose of this presentation. Basically, we don't need to add anything else here for now. So, and as you can see, here in the front end, we have updated the label. It says TLP clear. As we said, action steps, and we're going to populate in a second, are performed, they include commands and they are performed against agents and targets. So let's create an agent. Let's see what's going here. So let's say that I'm going to do that manually, right? So I'm the agent. Let's put here. Let's put EDR team. EDR team, and you can put, contact information, based on whatever the Kakao specification defines. So it's quite flexible. All right, so I create an agent, right? So I'm the person that's going to perform the command that we're going to define in a second. Yeah, and we have here signatures, we have extension definitions, workflow exception, we won't define, etc., etc., etc. As you'll see also the JSON here, keeps getting, larger and larger, right? So let's confirm that. So, and let's go to the action step. So this is our first action step. So let's say simply this action step contain endpoint, right? And we'll need to add a command. So let's add a command. So for the purpose of this presentation, I'll just add the manual command, but as you can see, these are the commands that are supported by Kakao right now. So from Yara, Sigma, OpenStreetJSON, Kestrel, Jupyter Notebooks, Elastic, Caldera, SSH, HTTP API, Bash, and manual. So, access the EDR and contain endpoint ABC, let's say. And here you can put the command basically. I could have basically the command that I can, do something, right? I'll confirm that, right? And basically, the person that is going to execute that is me, the agent. So I will add me here, right? And I will confirm that this is the guy that's going to do that. And then I'm also going to add an end step, right? So this is a very small playbook. We have here the expanded mode. So basically, because this is not very intuitive right now. So here it's a start and action step contain endpoint, but then you can see nothing more. So we have the expanded mode that basically brings you all the details regarding this action step in particular, right? So you can see here the commands now and the agent, right? So that's me that's going to perform something. And here it will have also the description of the command, but we'll also have the command itself. You have added a command, right? So the glass here basically is for our integrations with orchestrators. So when you run the playbooks, this will change color based on if something has been successful, if something failed, if something is ongoing. So this changes colors basically. It exposes an API from the user interface that orchestrators can use to push back results. We can use this also for debugging purposes. So basically, when we'll check the logs, let's say, that we get into the Kakao roster, we can see exactly what kind of command has been executed, because many of the commands in reality, they will include variables. So, and this is how we do it. It may be variables for, simple as something like finding the endpoint itself, the endpoint name, or the domain that can be accessed, or a MAC address or something. So these are passed through variables, but when it's about debugging, we need to have the full command that has been performed in order to do our debugging, right? So this is more or less. Of course, we have multiple options here, right? So we can move the canvas. We can give some space because the graphs, when they start getting messy, you can spread them a little more. You can zoom in, you can zoom out, and you'll see everything more detailed in a second in the larger playbook. We can digitally sign playbooks. We can verify playbooks. We can countersign playbooks. We can download playbooks. So let me show you. First of all, if I go back here, right? So you can see for each object, the JSON itself. So going back to the metadata, which basically shows the full playbook, let's say, you can see the JSON regarding, the full playbook, right? So you see here, for example, that we're creating a marking statement of a TLP clear, and we are using the TLP version 2 standard, right? Similarly, that's the same thing for all the steps, right? You could see stuff here. And this is the execution status that we're talking about. So I can add this manually, because if a command is manually executed, well, the person that's executing the command would have to add details here. So, that this action step was successfully completed, failed, is ongoing. We had a server-side error, there's a client-side error, timeout error. Well, most of these things here are coming through the API from the orchestrator, but even a successfully completed step by performing something manually is too important to have, right? So, and here, of course, this flag, let's call it, changes automatically by the API when you have it integrated with an orchestrator. So automated execution will be true if something was executed by an orchestrator. And something can be executed by an agent, but we have also added the ability to add sticks identifiers, right? So it will confirm that this has been successfully executed. So as you see here, that changed to green, right? And then it can keep track of the whole status of the playbook, basically. We can download the playbook. right? And we have two ways of doing it. One is with the coordinates extension that we have developed. So the coordinates extension, now it's called the Kakao layout specification. Basically, it allows you to incorporate coordinates in each of these constructs because when the playbooks get larger, as you're going to see in the next playbook, we for the human readability and for the purpose of understanding the playbook at a faster pace, and it needs to be meaningful in the way it is visualized. Have incorporated, this extension, and now it's an official work product that's going to be published by the Kakao Technical Committee. So if we don't download, so if we had something like this, and we start doing messy stuff, right? And we import the playbook, so it would go back automatically in something more sequential like this, right? Straight lines, and it would keep going here, and based on how many steps we have. So this capability is quite important to have. So when we download I didn't see that. So when we download the playbook, we can decide that we export it with coordinates, and I can export this with coordinates, right? So I can click OK and download now. Possibly you cannot. Can you see now my screen?
No.
All right.
On our end, it just got darker.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It's just because I'm sharing only the tab and you cannot see the full screen. So basically, that's the download thing, right? The window appear that says which folder I'm supposed to download that. So if you want to see that, I'll just reshare in a while. Okay. And various total now here plugins opened, and they were saying scan this for stuff. So okay. So yeah, and based on what you do, you can change things on success. You can have more nodes. So I could have something more here, right? I can have another action step. Basically, can go on failure, and similar. You can have on completion if you don't have on success or on failure. Having said that, let me show you the CISA playbook that we saw a minute ago in the presentation, right? That describes the vulnerability process. So I'll show you something more comprehensive. Also, you can download the playbooks here, right, in SVG, right? So you may want them as images for any kind of reason, adding them in your reports or something. And after that, I'll show you how it looks also in code, something more comprehensive. Something important that I haven't mentioned is that everything here is validated in real time. So basically, you can go at the bottom of the left bottom here, and you can see why this playbook is not a valid playbook. So if I click here, can you see now that or not? Are you able
Yes,
to see?
Yep, we see it.
Okay, cool. So yeah, so basically you can see exactly why this is not a valid playbook. This is mostly validated by the JSON validation schemas that we have, but for some things that we cannot do with JSON validation schemas, we have also some rules encoded in the code itself. So as you can see, here it describes exactly why this is not a valid playbook, and you can start fixing, all the issues that you have, right? And it seems that I cannot go out of that version. It was the first time that. Have you experienced that, Mateus, before, or?
I can not recall that.
It's the first time that I experienced that. I'm not sure why.
Either.
Having said that, now I cannot even do nothing. So I'll just stop sharing my screen, and I'll rerun the code. So I can bring a new instance online. That's the
joy,
live.
the joy of live demos.
Yeah, exactly what I was going to say. Let me. Yeah, just give me a second. I'll fix that for you. So. All right. Apologies for that.
Happens to all of us.
Yeah, we are back.
Speak for yourself, Charlie.
I am sorry. It happens to me. It happens to me, Charlie Frick of Johns Hopkins Applied Physics Lab. I do not mean to insinuate that Mr. Carter Bullard has ever had a failed demo in his illustrious career.
So,
If it were only true.
well, hopefully, I have saved the playbook that I want to demonstrate you. So let's import the playbook. So, yeah. And here we are back to something more complex now. So this is the CISA playbook that we saw in the presentation a while ago. This is encoded now in Kakao. Now you can see the full playbook here. Now it's even though that it doesn't have agent and targets or commands, you see that it starts getting quite large. You can see also the extension here attached, right? So this is the reason you can see it in a nicely in a nicely visualized manner. It's because I have downloaded earlier with the coordinates extension activated, right? So its node goes to specific place relative to the canvas. So yeah, so this is the CISA playbook that we checked earlier, right? Action step, identification of actively exploit vulnerability in the wild, and if we identify that, so the on completion step takes us to an if condition statement. This is another action step that we check if the vulnerability is present in our environment, and if it's true, then we initiate a parallel step to do two things at the same time. Of course, this playbook, you can find multiple ways of visualizing it, right? Maybe you didn't want to have a parallel step and you wanted to prioritize basically either of the two before the other. So do we have signs of exploitation? So if it's untrue, then we need to report to the incident response team. The incident response process start. And this is where was the implied dependency earlier, if you remember the arrow that was calling a different playbook. For the purpose of this presentation, I didn't create also the other playbook for incident response per CISA because I didn't have the time to do that. But instead of this action step here, we would have a playbook action that basically references another playbook. And when we click on that, we can see it either in a different tab or expanded in the canvas here. So this implied dependency. For the purpose of this presentation, is just an action step. And when that is completed, we need to report our status to CISA as directed. And you'll see here that there's also an end step, and end steps basically allows in Kakao to basically identify when a branch is ended. So we can go back to the right step. So in this particular case, when we go back here to the end step, we'll basically end up, an orchestrator would end up going back to the if condition step and follow the on completion step, which is basically going back to the end step, and this means the end of the execution of the playbook. Similarly here, the second branch of the parallel step would check if we can patch this vulnerability. And if we could do that, then we could patch it. So that means that when we click here, we would need to have, possibly we need to have a series of more nodes on how to do that, or we could have, basically a command doing that per se. So actually these playbooks that you see abstract, when you'll have to tailor it to your infrastructure and following your standard operating procedure, possibly will become quite larger. But this is the whole concept of Kakao, that it can be quite modular. So if we have a patching process, so this action step would be here replaced by another playbook that informs this whole process, right? So until we don't patch, then we would need to mitigate, so we need to perform another series of action steps. And at the end of the day, when it is completed, we'll need again to report to CISA as directed. When it goes back to the end step, goes back to the if condition step, it means that this has been completed and it ends the execution of the playbook. Yeah. And, these things here, as I said, would allow you to start moving things left and right. So you may want to delete something, add something extra here. So there is a lot of functionality involved. Possibly I miss some things. Now I'm skeptical and scared to click the invalid playbook here to see what's going on, but I'll do that after I'm done with everything.
And
Yeah.
Vasilios, we have about 5 more minutes.
Okay, yeah, then this is it more or less, Charles. I hope you're happy with the demonstration. And let me just do that to see if it's going to break. So we have a series of things to fix here before we have a valid playbook. It closed, okay, it works fine. Yeah, this is it from our side. Thank you for your attention. And please, if you have any questions, go ahead.
So just reiterating, first of all, phenomenal demonstration. Very excited to see this tool come out in January. Something I really wanted to see Kakao support for a very long time. So first of all, thank you.
Absolutely.
And then, so like probably for a lot of these invalid ones, if we click on an action step right now, it's missing agents and targets. Is that
That would be correct. That would be correct. Yes.
And so we can just, you
Yeah.
could just go in and do that.
So
Correct.
we actually indicate the required properties with the red dot, so you can see that we are missing also the
Oh.
commands.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's very helpful.
Yeah. So you can add your
Right.
variables, right? Delay, timeout, right? I mean, maybe you don't want this step to be executed at this particular time, so maybe it needs to wait for something.
Mhm.
So we can do that. Timeout if the step hangs for a reason, or nothing happened during a specific period, then we'll need to do something about it. So
I
Well-
don't know if I'll get the time anytime soon, but I'd love to take that large BPMN repository we made a few years ago, convert them all to Kakao, bring them in here and clean them up
Yeah.
to match the spec.
It's in our to-do list. I think we have translated like 3/4 of them.
It's a lot, I know.
Yeah,
And
yeah. So when we are done, we are going also to publish these playbooks, but I think Mateusz has translated most of them already. Yeah,
thank you. And I'm sorry.
Yes, that's correct.
yeah. Actually, he has sent me some of the BPMN playbooks and convert them to Kakao, but because of time, I didn't want to attempt.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
understand. But this
I'll
is
share
fantastic.
my screen.
All righty. We have a few minutes left, folks. Are there any, just, before we open up? Yes, good applause. And are there any additional questions that anyone might have regarding the editor and some of this functionality?
Yeah, I had one in particular. So all the demos and all the diagrams you guys show, it's all left to right. There's nothing coming back. And Vasilios, you mentioned that you can have arrows and actions going back into the cycle. I'd recommend, if I could, that you add a verification block, and in that last diagram, just have an arrow that goes all the way back to the beginning as the verification step. And then, of course, as you said, it comes up no visibility or no vulnerability seen, and then it drops out. Because that then brings in zero trust, which is verify. So just to have a block that says verification, I think would be really powerful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think that the execution status that we have there, I mean, should do what you're asking for. It's just that in order for it to work correctly, you would need to have something underneath an orchestrator to support with these things. Also, at the metadata level, we have a property that's called workflow exception. So if something goes bad for any kind of reason, we can, go back to a different branch that will start possibly redoing things or reverting things. So if the playbook was not able to be executed successfully fully, I'm not sure what kind of effects or cascading effects that may have in the infrastructure. So you have the ability to going back and performing, let's call them reversible actions, if that word exists in English. Yeah. So
Yeah, it just seems to
Uh.
me that everybody in the back of their mind is going to think verification. So why not just explicitly show them one arrow that goes back in the last demonstration diagram, so it's not left to the imagination. So you know what I mean? You can do it.
okay.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and I'm not even thinking that you should talk about it, but it's just a great part of a demonstration. Oh, and this, we can go back and in there that's how we do a verification cycle for the whole process. And it'd be very trivial to have it in the diagram. You wouldn't even have to talk about it, and people would see, oh, there's the OODA loop,
Okay,
there's
okay,
the
okay, yeah.
optimization, and that's how we get into the cycle, you know?
Right. Okay, now I understand your question better. So for simplification, this is the reason is an invalid playbook, even though that we can download it. In reality, if we want this playbook to be fully conformal to the specification, every of these branches that you show there, they all miss an end step. So we just added only one, so we can make it easier for you to understand the process. But this playbook is not conforming to the specification right now because I have removed all the end steps from all branches. So all branches need to have an end step, and this is where the orchestrator understands what happens and goes back. So it's just that I explained this verbally. So all the branches normally, so I don't have this diagram now, maybe Mateus has it because Mateus sent me a diagram with all these verifications that you're asking, but then it had another 20 end steps here and there that shows how really the orchestrator would process that.
Yeah, and I don't mean
Yeah.
verification of the playbook. I mean verification that the action of the playbook was successful.
Yeah, so that happens through the execution status. Yeah, so this is basically the same playbook that I showed you with more end steps. But regarding the verification itself, this is, since Mateus, you have it open, if you go on the action step and you show the workflow, the execution status field, so this is where the verification happens. So it's just like that I showed one, I populated one manually, but these are all populated automatically when you're using the orchestrator. Yeah. So for each one of them, it will start saying if it failed or if it didn't fail. So you'll see the command, even though that is base64 encoded, it will still show you there in plain text. So you can see exactly the full command that was executed. So you can see exactly what went wrong. Yeah. And you can add also notes, why it went wrong, what do we need to fix. So, but because for us, it's not only about fully automating stuff, but playbooks are, especially raw playbooks, are a path to automation. We want it also to have the ability for incident responders to add their notes manually if some of these steps are executed manually. But in
in my suggestion, there would be an arrow in the very bottom action step on the bottom right that would go back all the way to the action step identification of actively exploited. Automatically always do that because then the vulnerability present would be no, and then it would end. The only way you could end would be to go back and identify the actively exploited vulnerability and realize it's not there and then end. So it's just a process where it's not a verification of each step. It's just a verification of the whole process. And it's a very simple arrow you can put in and it'd be pretty trivial.
So you will see that because we are using too many if condition steps, everything says on true or on false. But if we go to a normal action step, for example, the first action step, you could change the arrows to this verification that is on success or on failure. So now it's on success or on failure. Yeah.
Yeah, that's perfect.
All right. Cool.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Alrighty then. Well, In our last minute, I'll just briefly share that for those familiar, the OCA is also sponsoring the CASP automation events, and we had one of those last week. Our IOB's Kurt Korolenko represented the IOB team there, and we're actively working with Duncan Vasilios, the OpenC2 team, the Kestrel team, and anybody else that wants to play in the CASP Automation Plugfest to design out a combined scenario where we can utilize these tools together. From the IOB perspective, we're excited to be able to embed things like these Cacao playbooks into the playbook objects that we can then relate to detecting and responding to sequences of behavior. And we think that there's a whole lot of goodness here that we're excited to get to share and demonstrate to the world how we can tie all this together, embed them in Styx Taxi, and get them distributed at machine speed to multiple parties to take automated action to defend our networks. And with that, I'll wish everybody a beautiful end to the year 2023. We will reconvene in January, very close to the debut of the Cacao Roaster, and I will be sending out the minutes, recordings, and Vasilios, I believe you provided me a copy of the slides. I can share those with the group. And then we will see you all in the new year. Thank you for your time. And I'm going to stop the recording now.